From the very first beat 'em up game to the very last game released on the NES. In this video, we're going to take a look at another 10 games in my NES collection. This is volume 13 of my 10 games in my NES collection series. Game number 121 in my NES collection is gonna be The Adventures of Lolo 2. Now this one is exactly the same as the first one. It even runs on the same engine as the first one. And for that reason, it's pretty much perfect. This is the second game in that Lolo series. This one is a puzzler game exactly the same as the first one, and this one is extremely fun. At the start of each level, it's going to give you everything you need to complete the level, the same as the first game. This one does bring the difficulty level up just a little bit, and after playing and loving the first one, I kind of like that. Now in the first one, until we get to those later levels, there's always kind of one trick you need to figure out. Now in this one, you need to pay attention to what's going on because normally they're a little more difficult. There's a couple things that could get you and a couple things that you need to figure out to beat that level. This is a really fun one, and the best thing I think they could have done with the Lolo series was just keep them the same and just keep on making them a little bit better. Making those puzzles and that gameplay a little bit better was a good choice with the Lolo series. All three of these games are super fun. They're all basically the same, just a little bit different, getting a little bit better with each entry into the series. Game number 121 in my NES collection is gonna be Adventures of Lolo 2. Now remember, this isn't a best of list, nothing like that. We're just looking at games in my collection, so I get to play them, you get to take a look at them. Maybe there's some of these that are gonna pop out to you that you're gonna remember, bring back some memories for you. Game number 122 in my NES collection is gonna be one of those combo games. It's gonna be Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, and World Class Track Meet all in one cartridge. Now, a lot of us are gonna remember that cartridge that came with the system with Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. They did a few of these, and in this one, we get some pretty good games. Super Mario Bros. Is a classic. I don't know what more I can say about this one. We can also grab that NES Zapper and head out to do some duck hunting on this one as well. And guys, it doesn't matter what version of this you're playing, that annoying snarky dog when you miss, you still can't shoot at him. It's just not allowed. Or if you have the power pad, you could do some aggressive running right there in your living room with World Class Track Meet. Now, most of the games on this cartridge we either have already covered or we will be covering. I don't want to go super in depth on this one because it is one of those combo cartridges. I do like the colors they used on this one. Looks like Mario has his fire outfit on. I like that they put those yellow lettering on this cartridge. This one is a pretty cool one because it has all three games on it, and back in the day, if you were just looking to pick up one cartridge, have a few different games, this one would have been a good one to pick up. Game number 123 in my NES collection is gonna be The Bard's Tale. Now this one is your basic dungeon crawler. If you're someone that is into those D&D games we would have seen on the NES or on the PC, this is one you might like. We start out in an adventurers guild where we're going to be able to assemble our party. Now we can pick up to 6 members here with classes like the warrior, the hunter, the rogue, the wizard, and of course the bard. This one has that basic dungeon crawling look to it, and while we're adventuring around, we can get attacked by groups of enemies that we need to fight. Now this one I did get a little bit frustrated with as I was adventuring around in what I thought was just town that I was walking around in. I kept getting pummeled by those groups of enemies, and I didn't seem to have a character that was able to heal me. I didn't have a cleric or anything like that, no healing spells, which definitely was a little frustrating at the start for me. Now apparently at about level 3 you can get a healing spell, so I'll have to tough it out again and get to that point. After that, I think this one might be a little more interesting and maybe I'll be able to enjoy it a little bit more. Game number 124 in my NES collection is going to be Tiny Toons Cartoon Workshop. Now this is an interesting one. We're basically using pre-rendered cartoon characters to make little cartoons in that Tiny Toons world. This one is kind of a cool one. This would have been a fun one as a kid back when those Tiny Toon cartoons were all over our television screens after school. I know I have a friend that has memories of renting this one and spending the weekend as a kid making his own Tiny Toons cartoons. This one isn't like the other Tiny Toons cartoons that we saw on the Nintendo or the Super Nintendo, but it is an interesting one. It's cool to look back and see that they were doing things like this on the NES back in the day, allowing us kids to be creative and make our own Tiny Toons cartoons.
Good morning, this is McDonald's Tiny Toon Adventures Traffic Report. Looks like Sweetie is flattened furball, Buster's shooting hoops in the northbound lane, and Wacky Land is seeing the usual tie-ups. This report is brought to you by McDonald's, where one toy vehicle comes with each Happy Meal you buy.
Game number 125 in my NES collection is going to be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now this is the Mindscape version. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is an action game that was released in 1988 for the NES. The game is based on the arcade game, which is obviously based on the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, the interesting thing about this one is that it was originally released by Mindscape in December of 1988. Now, the publishing rights for this one reverted back to Tengen the following year, and Tengen announced plans to re-release this game in that unlicensed version that we saw from Tengen in October. So you can find this one as the official NES release in that gray cartridge, or you can look for that black Tengen cartridge. They are basically the same game. Now, the NES version follows the storyline of that original film. At the start of the game, Indiana Jones has just reached that Pankot Palace featured in the movie and is preparing to free those slave children, recover that missing stone, and defeat Mola Ram. The game actually differs from the original arcade version in many respects, including the layout and the manner of which we progress through the game, but the plot remains unchanged in both versions. Now, the game does make a pretty good attempt at a John Williams musical score, but the poor controls we see in this one, those unappealing graphics, and the sheer number of enemies make this one not really the best game on the NES. And the fact that it has a text-only ending definitely doesn't save this one. Game number 126 in my NES collection is going to be Wario's Woods. Now this one was published and developed by Nintendo. Wario's Woods saw releases on the NES and the Super Nintendo, but the NES version is noteworthy for being the last officially licensed game, as well as the final first-party game released on the system in North America. And it is actually the only game on the NES to receive a rating from that Entertainment Software Ratings Board, that ESRB, which actually was created several months before the game was released. In this one, Wario has invaded the peaceful woods with his group of monsters, and that forest community where all those peaceful creatures used to live, well, they're really no longer welcome there. But luckily, we have Toad, who has come to try and stop him and return the woods back over to the sprites. In Wario's Woods, we're trying to clear the playing field from a variety of monsters. These monsters come in a variety of different colors, and we're going to be using bombs of matching colors, which are going to be dropped onto the field from the top of the screen by one of those peaceful little sprites. Now, in order to do this, the monsters and the bombs have to be rearranged so that 3 or more objects of the same color are placed adjacent to one another, either horizontally, vertically, or even diagonally in this one, with at least one of those objects being a bomb. This one is a really fun game. It does have a 2-player mode in it where we're going up against each other trying to clear those playing fields. And in this one, if you get like 2 or more matches on your side, it actually stacks monsters on the other player's side. This one is a really fun one. The fact that it was one of the last games, or the last game, to be released on the NES by Nintendo officially. The fact that it has that ESRB on there, this is the only Nintendo game that has that. That makes this one a really cool one to have in the collection.
The answer, please, Mr. Crowley. Today!
Think that's pressure? Try Wario's Woods, the new action puzzle where stuff's hurling down on you, in on you, and Wario is all over you. Only for Nintendo.
Game number 127 in my NES collection is gonna be Fist of the North Star. Now, Fist of the North Star is a side-scrolling action game. This one was released first in Japan under the title of, and bear with me here, Hokuto no Ken 2 on April 17th, 1987. This is actually the second one in that game series that was actually released on the Famicom. There are 4 games in that series on the Famicom, but we only saw this one brought to the NES. Hokuto no Ken 2, or Fist of the North Star, which I believe is how I'm going to be referring to it so I don't ruin that name anymore, is actually a Japanese manga series, and it is hyper violent. Like, I'm talking crazy one punch, the guy explodes, hyper violent. It was actually done as 2 different anime series by Toei Animation at one point. So these games were kind of the tie-in for that. And again, this is the only one that we saw brought to North America. Now, the game that we saw here is a single plane beat 'em up, where we're just kind of walking left or right, using our martial arts attacks to defeat the enemy. This one is similar to games like Kung Fu Master, where jumping is performed by pressing the D-pad upwards instead of having a dedicated button, which leaves the A and the B button open solely for attacks. Now, with 2 attacks, you would think that you're going to be kicking and punching your way through these levels. But if we go back to that manga series and look at it, the character of Ken in that series has this super powered punch that basically causes the enemies to explode, which we can see here in the game. So in this one, punching your enemies is actually the only way to gain the power-ups. And honestly, the kicking attack has some really funky hit detection. So maybe just exploding your enemies with a punch as much as you can is the best option. This one has some wonky controls, and unless you know the source material and are super into that, this one might be a pass. It is very beatable if you know what you're doing, but I don't know if that actually makes it a game worth playing. Game number 128 in my NES collection is gonna be Mad Max. Now, Mad Max on the NES is a post-apocalyptic action game that was actually developed by the Canadian studio of Grey Matter and published by Mindscape in 1990. This one is based on the movie of Mad Max, the Road Warrior, and if your dad was anything like mine back in the 90s, that's definitely one that I got to watch when my mom wasn't looking. I'm a big fan of the Mad Max movies, but this game isn't the best. We basically drive around in our car, throwing dynamite at other cars and avoiding oil slicks. But you need to be careful because while we are driving around in that post-apocalyptic wasteland, fuel is hard to come by. Now, you can find a store and you can find an enemy base in the first level. You need to stock up on food and water, which is gonna become our currency in the game. You can stock up on food and water in that enemy base, but you need enough gas to get back to where you're going too. Once you have food and water, you're gonna be able to go and buy an arena pass, which lets you enter the arena, where it's basically just a demolition derby until you're the last car standing. And then back into the wasteland we go to drive in circles all over again. This one isn't the worst game out there. It definitely would have been one that would have been fun to rent back in the day if you were like me and had watched Mad Max the Road Warrior with your dad back then. Could have played it for a few hours and checked it out. Probably would have played it for a little bit, not knowing what I was doing, and then went outside and played Road Warrior out there on my BMX or something like that. but not the worst game, not the best game. Mad Max Road Warrior is going to be game number 128 in my NES collection. Game number 129 in my NES collection is going to be Kabuki Quantum Fighter. Now this one was released in January of 1991 and does find itself on a lot of hidden gems lists. It's because it is a really great game. In the year 2056, a virus has appeared in the main defense computer of the planet Earth. The origins and nature of this virus are completely unknown. We play as Colonel Scott O'Connor, a military agent who has transferred his brain into raw binary code using this experimental technology in order to combat that rogue program in the main defense computer. This is one that I did have as a kid, and I will always remember his attacks. It's a side scroller with a single room with a boss at the end of each level, and O'Connor uses his long hair and this chip-based weaponry to attack the enemies inside the computer. Basically, we're just headbanging our way through the enemies, attacking them with our hair. If you have a chance to pick this one up, this is a relatively cheap game, and it is a really great game. Definitely a bit of a hidden gem, maybe not so much anymore, but definitely a great game for the NES collection. Game number 130 in my NES collection is gonna be the very first game of its genre. It's gonna be Renegade. Renegade is a very cool game based on what it brought to the gaming world. This is basically the first ever beat 'em up game that defined that beat 'em up genre. It established the standard of gameplay format adopted by later games in that genre of the beat 'em up style. In the Japanese version, the game revolves around a high school delinquent who has to stand up against a series of rival gangs that are frequently targeting his friend and classmate. In the Western version of Renegade, we're going to be controlling a street brawler, and we have to go up against those 4 different gangs in order to rescue our girlfriend, who is being held captive by a mob boss. I don't know why we were always having to rescue our girlfriends in these games back on the NES, but it seems to happen a lot. This one is fun to play, and the fact that it is the very first of its kind and really paved the way for games like Double Dragon to further advance and popularize the beat 'em up genre format makes this one a really great game. And because of that, Renegade is one that I am so glad to have in my collection.